What's up, you amazing people? I hope you're having a fantastic day. You are, of course, watching and listening to the Daily Dirty 30, also known as the DDT, here on The Kevin Lee Show. And I am your host, Kevin Lee. Now, for those of you who do not know what the DDT is all about, let me take a moment to explain. You see, it's a show that airs live at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, Monday through Friday, and it's where I get to spend 30 minutes telling you, the viewer, all about the things that bother me today. What do I get out of it? That's easy. It's therapeutic. Why should you tune in? That's even easier. It's entertaining. Sound like a fair trade? Good. Let's get to it. Hello, and I hope everyone is having a happy Labor Day. I know I am, just because why not? Anyways, I hope everyone did actually have a good, happy Labor Day weekend. And just in case you're confused where you might just be right now, you are actually watching the Daily Dirty 30 here on The Kevin Lee Show. It's a show that airs every Monday through Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And of course, my name is Kevin. Today, we are going to be talking about just what I was just mentioning. It's Labor Day. I think we're going to be kind of chill. I don't see why not. There's no reason to have some big over-the-top production. There's no reason to talk about any depressing topics that we don't need to actually talk about today, so let's not. Instead, we're going to actually mention a few things about what actually Labor Day is. To make it simple, let's just do some black and white definitions right quick of what Labor Day is. So, go right to Wikipedia just to make it quickle. I don't know if you've ever watched this show before or if you've watched a numerous amount of episodes, but I keep making up new words. I should get paid for this or something. I don't know. Anyways, Labor Day is a federal holiday in the United States celebrated on the first Monday in September to honor and recognize the American labor movement and the works and contributions of laborers to the development and achievements of the United States. Yada, yada, yada. It's a time to go have some picnics and get drunk and eat way too many hamburgers and cheeseburgers and hot dogs and brats and, corn on the cob and go to parades. Of course, this year might look a little different. Might be a little. Could be. Maybe. A little different. Just because, there's a little bug going around. But anyways, I do really hope that you had a good Labor Day weekend. I hope that if you had to work, hopefully it wasn't too much. And then if you had to work today, hopefully you got paid time and a half and maybe you got a chance to go out and buy yourself something pretty. I don't know. But I do hope that you had a chance to have some fun, relax, and enjoy because life is so stressful lately. I mean, let's talk about it. It's 2020. It's been a nightmare, right? From the get-go, we've had a scare of World War III, and we had all these terrible things that happened, and then it kind of culminated with COVID, and then on top of it, we've been kind of just treading water ever since. So at least I hope you had one day of your life to relax, even if it was just for an hour. But pretty much that's going to be it for what Labor Day is. Now, beyond that, though. Since we're talking about labor, I figured I would be remiss if I didn't at least discuss a couple of things that had to do with labor. Now, you do know we are, of course, in the midst of a election cycle. And the thing is that we have basically two candidates we can vote for, right? We have, on the left, we have Joe Biden. And on the right, we have Donald Trump. And of course, you've always heard the adage, voting for the lesser of the two evils. But I think this year it fits more than it probably ever has in my lifetime. That being said, I want you to know there are actually more than two candidates for you to vote for. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But before we do, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I want to discuss a topic that is near and dear to many people, because many people out there, well, let's just put out some facts real quickly. I'm not going to put up statistics. I'm just going to lay them out for you. As we know, the median income in the United States, which is the true middle amount, meaning that 50% of the people in the country make more than that amount and 50% of the people make less than, is somewhere, give or take in the ballpark, for about $27,000 a year, which is ridiculous. But let's just say it's the truth. So the typical person makes $27,000, or the middle number person. So, basically the true average makes about $27,000 a year or less. It's a crap amount of money. That I agree. So there's a lot of people out there who are striving to earn more, who are wanting to earn more. And of course, you hear this talk all the time of, minimum wage. And, minimum wage, I think, is still on the federal level. I know we talked about this the other week, but I think it's $7.25 an hour still, or $7.25 or $8.25. And some states have gone up, like even where I live in Illinois, you know, I think it's at 9.25 maybe, but it's still pretty low. That being said, should we even have a minimum wage? And that's a discussion we're going to have right now. To do that, I'm going to actually bring up a video for you to watch because there's no reason for me to reinvent the wheel. So this is about a 4-minute video I want you to watch, and then we'll discuss it afterwards.
The city of Seattle made history on Monday when it raised the minimum wage.
The highest in the nation by far.
5 years ago, Seattle became the first city to pass a $15 minimum wage.
I think it's pretty awesome since I benefit from it.
The rising tide raises all boats.
15 in Seattle is just a beginning. We have an entire world to win. Solidarity.
When the law passed, we went to Seattle to interview people about it.
It's a good thing that we're leading the way for the rest of the country.
I wish that it was all over the place, not just Seattle.
Increasingly, it is.
New York State taking steps towards a $15 an hour minimum wage.
Other states and lots of cities have copied Seattle.
California Governor Jerry Brown signed a $15 minimum wage bill.
But now the results from Seattle are in. Some people are being paid more. They're the winners. But for many people who wanted jobs,
the increased minimum wage is having an opposite effect,
costing thousands of jobs and actually hurting low-income workers.
You see it on this graph. The green line tracks the number of new jobs created in Washington state. The red line is new jobs in Seattle. Once Seattle raised its minimum to $15, entry-level job growth stalled.
It's really presented by minimum wage advocates as a win-win. It's a win-win for employers. It's a win-win for workers. And, you know, there are no negatives.
But there are negatives, says Erin Shannon of the Washington Policy Center. She points to stories like this one, where the owner used to hire kids and train them. But once Seattle raised the minimum, she stopped hiring beginners.
Politicians in Seattle especially have no sense whatsoever about what it means to small businesses like us.
Most people we interviewed said the politicians are right.
Yes, some people will go out of business, others will take their place.
It's something we need to do.
It's as if they've never learned about supply and demand.
Minimum wage actually hurts my chances of getting employed.
This 20-year-old understands the effect better than Seattle's politicians did.
Raising the minimum wage causes increased unemployment.
Rigel Novakoza is one of the $1,500 winners of a video contest done by my classroom charity.
My name is Dylan Hodes, and this is my Wage Rage.
Dylan Hodes won the high school video contest. He mentioned a friend who worked at Kroger until her store raised its minimum to $12.
She was getting paid $12 an hour, but slowly but surely, they started cutting her days, her hours. She was regulated to only working on Sundays. And that's because she was young and inexperienced. I feel the big thing.
She wasn't worth $12.
She wasn't worth $12 to Kroger. She's worth the world to me, but she wasn't worth $12 to Kroger.
I learned things from their videos, like how many wealthy countries have no minimum wage.
Countries such as Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and Switzerland.
Nobody knows that.
No, and especially with Switzerland,
which has much lower unemployment than America. Partly because Switzerland has no minimum.
It stops us from actually getting a job.
Esther Rhodes won the high school essay contest. Her essay pointed out that America's first minimum wage laws were racist. At the time, blacks were often paid less, but they were more likely to be employed than whites.
The whites were like, hey, they're getting all the jobs. This isn't fair.
Congressman Allgood said he hoped the minimum wage would stop cheap colored labor in competition with white labor. So although Americans think the minimum was invented to help needy people,
it was meant for the opposite, to keep the poor and the minorities from getting jobs.
And today it still keeps entry-level workers from finding work. But the politicians don't understand the downside.
Lift up the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour.
Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
It's easy to see why a higher minimum wage is so popular.
On the surface, you think, oh, this is a great idea.
Because it raises some people's wages.
Everybody deserves a living wage.
But while it helps some, it harms many others, especially young people who may now not be offered their first job.
I'm 14. It'd be very difficult for me to find a job. My labor wouldn't be worth $15 an hour.
If only politicians were as smart as those kids.
Okay, so let's talk about that. There is the general consensus is yes, it is good to pay people more when possible. The problem is most people don't understand how this works. Everyone, not everyone, I shouldn't say that. That's a generality that I should not be using. I apologize. There are a large number of people, let's put it that way, who are under this weird impression to think that business owners in general make tons of money. Like every business owner, like no matter who you are, you think, well, you walk up to a McDonald's and you know, that guy who owns the McDonald's, that guy must be bringing in what, $2, $3, $4 million a year. And I've had this conversation with educated people, even people who are business oriented, who believe this is how much these people make. They don't. In fact, most of these franchise owners make, if they're lucky, $75,000, $100,000 a year. Some make $50,000. Some actually have employees that get paid more than the owners do. Right? It's a reality. It happens. It happens all the time. And everyone's like, okay, well, that's fine. That's not the average person. We know that these majority of all businesses and majority of all people are employed by, you know, these large conglomerates like Amazon and I almost said Motorola. Motorola doesn't exist anymore. But, you know, all these other major companies out there, just pick one. You know, AT&T, T-Mobile, you know, whatever, Verizon, or any company really. I almost said Toys R Us, but Toys R Us doesn't exist either. But that thing is, the truth is that they're not. About 30% of the population is, or of workers are generally employed by large companies. 70% of all other people are employed by small businesses. Again, small businesses on average do not make a lot of money. That being said, if you were to force all these small businesses to have to pay all this money, well, they don't really have a choice, do they? They're going to have to make cuts. They're either going to have to, you know, jack up their prices on the products and the things that they sell, as you know, and or cut people's hours, cut positions, which is going to, you know, inconvenience people to begin with. And on top of it, here's another perfect example. Have you walked into a McDonald's in the last, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years? How many of them have installed these kiosks, right? This is supposed to replace a front desk worker or front counter worker. I've never used one. They're there and we're supposed to use them. In fact, I remember when they first put them in, I'd walk in, I'd go up to the counter and someone would go, oh, I'm sorry, you know, you can use the kiosk. I'm like, nope, not going to happen. And I would just give them my order and they would take my order. Again, I never gave that the employees themselves a hard time, but I'm not going to sit there and work with a machine. Maybe if it was going to save me money, maybe if it was actually going to save me time. If I walk up there and there's 10 people in line and I can order on the kiosk and be done like that, I would do it. But generally speaking, no, I ain't gonna do it. But that could be our future if we force all these companies and all these franchisees to raise all these wages. Now, again, you say, well, you know, it's too bad that that's a cost of doing business. Well, guess what? When those people are all making $15 an hour, how much do you think a Big Mac is going to cost? I mean, it's already astronomical. I remember, I'm old enough. Truly, I am old enough to remember. Like when I was in high school, they used to, you know, you had like a buy two Big Mac deal like you can get now for like what, $6 is a good deal. Maybe not even that cheap. I don't even know. I can't remember the last time they had a deal like that here, you know, nowadays. But back in high school, $2. $2 for 2 Big Macs. That's how old I am. And it wasn't even that long ago, to be honest with you. So if they have, and the reason I bring this up is because I went to McDonald's the other day. I wasn't going to get a Big Mac meal, but I happened to notice that the Big Mac meal, the number one or whatever it is on the menu, was like $9 for a Big Mac, a medium fry, and a medium Coke for $9. And that's before the $15 an hour wage goes into effect in most of these states, because it's not the law where I'm at, right? I mean, they're raising it, and they have a gradual, you know, stepping stone of how they're going to raise it. But that being said, and not only that, you can't, you know, like the video was mentioning, because it's the truth. You're going to have to make cuts. Like you can't have, you know, 6 registers open on a Saturday at a grocery store. It's going to be down to 2, and then people are going to be 12 people deep in line and wondering why there's no more registers open. Well, it's because people have to pay all this money that they cannot afford or do not want to, you know, they don't want to throw away all their profits. So that is an issue. That is a problem. But that being said, now I want to let you hear from someone who is one of the voices of the current Libertarian Party. This is actually a gentleman who is running as the vice president candidate with Joe Jorgensen. His name is Spike Cohen, and he's doing a little 3-4 minute bit on an interview he was doing about, the minimum wage. And I think he did an excellent job describing it and explaining it. So I'm going to let him explain it in his own words.
How do you address minimum wage? Well, we're getting all the fun ones right out of the way to begin with. So minimum wage, let's look at the history of minimum wage in this country, at least. When Black people were being freed from slavery, and when an increasing number of immigrants were coming into the country to do labor, there were a lot of people that were not very happy about people who were not white or were not their idea of white at the time, that were able to get work because they were willing to work for less than they were. And so they actually created laws that said, okay, here is the white standard of what someone should be paid. And because we believe that most employers, if they have to pay this amount, they're going to go with a white person than with someone else. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, that's what ended up happening. And it actually shut out people of color and migrants from being able to do work. Fast forward ahead to what we have now. Minimum wage is a imposition on a market telling people what labor is worth instead of allowing the laborer and the employer to make that decision between them, or even to allow a labor union and an employer to make that decision collectively between them. It's the government arbitrarily saying, okay, all labor is worth at least this much. And here's the problem with that. The big companies can afford it. In fact, you'll notice Amazon and Walmart have actually started pushing for minimum wage increases. Do you know why? It's not because of the goodness of their heart. It's because they know it'll shut out their smaller competitors. They can afford it. It'll hurt their bottom line, but they can afford it. Their competitors probably can't afford it. They'll have to downsize. They'll have to have fewer employees. They may have to go out of business. They may have to do something else because they can't afford the minimum labor increases. Here's the problem here, because here's what the real issue is. Because when you talk to someone who says, I want a higher minimum wage, they're not saying, I want the government to force employers to charge an arbitrary amount. What they're saying is, I need more money, or I believe other people who are working need more money. And they do, because the cost of living continues to skyrocket. Well, here's why the cost of living continues to skyrocket. Because of regulatory burdens that government puts in place that makes everything, but especially things like housing and healthcare and education, more expensive, but really makes everything at least a little more expensive. And also because the Federal Reserve is printing out endless trillions of dollars to loan to the government that they can spend on all the things like wars and putting people in cages and camps on the border and all the stuff that they know we'd never agree to tax increases for. So instead what they do is they just print out money, lend it to themselves, and stick us with the bill with interest for the next 30 or 40 years, which is a way more insidious way of stealing from us, right? Because they're not just taxing us up front. They're without really our consent or approval or even our input. They're just going ahead and doing it, paying for it from their own money that they've printed out, and then stuck you with the bill with interest. And because they're printing out endless streams of money without adding any corresponding value to that extra money, and they're inflating the monetary supply without inflating the value, your money is worth less. Those same Federal Reserve notes that you have in your wallet or in your bank account or stuffed under your bed or wherever you have your money is worth less and less and less every single day. It's been happening every day since 1913, and that's not the way it used to be. The cost of living used to go up and down regularly with various economic conditions and supply and demand. Now it just steadily goes up. Even if the economy tanks, the cost of living goes up. The economy does well, the cost of living goes up. And the reason is because there's this endless printing out of Federal Reserve notes, something that would never happen in a free market system of banking and currency. So those are the real problems. That's how you make it so that your money is actually worth something. That's how you make it where employers aren't having to go out of business because they can't afford the regulatory burdens and the wage increases. That's how you deal with that problem.
Okay, so now, earlier, if you were here with us, you heard me talk about that there are more than 2 people running for office in the United States for the presidency. We have Joe Biden, of course, and Donald Trump. But we also have Jo Jorgensen and her running mate, Spike Cohen. Now, that's the reason why I wanted to show you that video, is because you need to understand there's more than just what you've been told. There's more to everything than what we know. I mean, there's none of us who have all the information, right? But there are some of us who are starting to see things, be exposed to things that are different than what maybe we had known a few years ago. I mean, if you would have told me 20 years ago that there was going to be another political party that not only would be able to compete against the duopoly, I would say you're crazy. If you told me there's going to be another political party 20 years ago that would have a better argument than the duopoly, the duopoly obviously being the Democrats and Republicans, I would have said, no, it doesn't make any sense, just the way it's always going to be. But if it's fast forward, now the Libertarian Party isn't brand new, but it has been growing steadily very recently, and for good reason, because they make good arguments and they put out good candidates. It is important to understand, like I said, that there are more than just two parties in this country. And here's a perfect example of what's going on. Though there are two major parties, they're doing everything they can to hold down anyone else from rising up. May it be the Libertarian Party, may it be the Green Party, may it be the Constitutionalists. It doesn't matter. The Democrats and Republicans are teaming up together because they know they have got a good thing going and they don't want to ruin it. And I'm going to show you some proof of that right now. We're going to head over to Texas, of all places. Now, the Texas Supreme Court rejected the Republicans' attempt to remove 44 libertarians from the November ballot. Think about that. We're not talking one person, two people. We're talking 44 libertarians just in one state. Okay, the GOP sued because the libertarians didn't pay their filing fees, but the state Supreme Court said Republicans missed the deadline to kick them off the ballot. Now, that seems like a very weird headline or subheadline, and it is. So the thing is that you would say, well, the libertarians, they didn't pay their filing fees. Obviously, they shouldn't even be on the ballot. That's unfair. But there's a lot more to the story than you know. In fact, I'll just give you, without bringing up all the different pieces in the article, I'll just paraphrase for you. What happened is late last year, I think it was somewhere in the fall, the state passed legislation and got it signed into law, basically forcing third parties like the Libertarian Party or the Green Party or whatever party you want to say that is not the Democrats and it's not the Republicans to have to start paying filing fees just to run for office. Something they never had to do before. Not last year, not the year before, not the decade before, or the decade before that, or the decade before that. Something completely new. Another hurdle for them to have to do. Now, why would the Republicans and the Democrats be fighting to pass laws to force third parties to pay filing fees? Well, they're trying to keep them out because they know that there are a lot of people who, if they knew what the Libertarian Party was and knew that there was a third option, that they would peel some votes away from the Republicans. And the same goes for the Democrats. Democrats fear people like for the Green Party because they know there's a good chance that they could start peeling some of the votes away from there. Perfect example is this right here, right? It talks about in order to qualify, this is a law that was signed into law, but actually was challenged almost immediately and then went to several different appellate courts. And again, we just heard the verdict again saying now that they've missed this deadline, that they cannot kick these people off of the ballots in November. But it says in order to qualify for the general election ballot, third-party candidates now must either pay a filing fee, which can be as high as $5,000, depending on the office being sought, or submit a petition of eligible signatures, which may be as many as 5,000 for statewide office. Now, you hear those numbers, you go, okay, well, why can't a politician come up with $5,000? The Libertarian Party is a grassroots organization. Many of these people are funding their own, campaigns. They have friends and family who are going out knocking door to door. Many of these people are running for things like, state representative, which is a great position to be in if you can get it. But it's not like you're running for the presidency of the United States of America. So the fact that they're charging some of these people as high as $5,000 is astronomical to these people, as well as they say, well, or you can submit a petition. Well, how hard is that? Well, if you continue reading, you have to get up to as many as 5,000 signatures for statewide offices. But this is the caveat. None of these signatures, none of the people who can sign your petition are voters who plan on voting in either the Democrat or the Republican Party. So you have to find independents or libertarians only to sign your petition. So they're making it very, very difficult and making you, jump through hoops, backwards, on fire, and landing on tax is basically what they're doing. Now, a lot of people say, well, this $5,000 thing, don't Republicans and Democrats have to pay a filing fee as well? And haven't they had to for a while? Yes, they do. But this is the reason why they have to. As the next paragraph says, filing fees collected from Democratic and Republican candidates help cover costs to run taxpayer-funded primary elections. Because for the Democrats and the Republicans, their primary elections are actually paid for by you, the taxpayer. But you didn't know that one. But see, that's the problem. Smaller parties, private parties like the Libertarian Party or the Green Party, or again, any other party out there, really, these minor parties say that these new fees imposed on their candidates are burdensome and unfair because Texas Libertarian and Green parties choose their nominees through conventions funded entirely by the parties themselves. They get no taxpayer money to pay for their conventions, to run their campaigns. Everything is done privately, as you would expect from a libertarian. So why, if you are not relying on taxpayer funds, why should you have to pay the fines now, or pay these fees? Actually, there are fines, really, if you think about it. So that being said, I can understand them requiring signatures. Okay, that's fine. That's not a problem. But being that you would consider any signature invalid if it came from a potential voter or voter who plans on voting Democratic or Republican, that's ridiculous. You should just have to get a signature. That's all it should be. A petition is a petition is a petition. As long as it's a legitimate signature from a registered voter in that state or in that region or whatever it needs to be, that's fine. It shouldn't matter. But again, they're trying to make it next to impossible. Not impossible technically, but next to impossible, just so people cannot run. So they have no competition, right? I mean, when you think about it, the reason why people get into the Democratic Party or into the Republican Party is because they know that there are voters in that area who will vote for them. Perfect example, Donald Trump. There's no one that's watching this right now or is going to watch it in the future who's ever going to say, Donald Trump was a really good Republican. He was a lifelong Republican. Nope. He was a lifelong Democrat because he lived in New York until he wanted to run for office. And he realized there's already someone running in the Democratic ticket. I'm going to run in the Republican ticket. That I can do. I can weasel my way in there. And he did. And he did a great job. Kudos to him, I suppose. But he is not a Republican. There are people, there are politicians who have actually ran for office, won as one party, and then realized that the tide had changed where they lived. So they switched parties while they were in office so they could run on the other ticket. And then they got reelected. And some of those people actually switched back again. You see, people think that Democrats and Republicans are different. They're not. They're two sides of the same coin. They're both a group of people who want power and control and authority and money. That's all they want. And they know that they have to play a game to get there, and they're willing to do it. That's why you will at times see people who you think are actual arch enemies in the Senate having lunch together, sometimes laughing. Do you know why? Because they're on the same side. Of course, they have to put on a good show. They have to put on a good face for the public. But really, behind the scenes, these people are all friends. They really are. They don't hate each other. They might spew a few things here. Now, not to say that people do not hate Donald Trump. I think people who genuinely do not like Donald Trump do not like Donald Trump, probably. But again, he's not really a politician, is he? He just got elected this first time to presidency. So there's that. That being said, this Labor Day, I want you to think about your present, the present of your life today. What is the state of your life today? Are you happy with the way your life is? Are you not? Chances are you're not, no matter who you are. I mean, you'd be lucky to even have a job right now. So if you are celebrating Labor Day because you have a job, congratulations to you. But there are millions of people out there who don't have a job. And that's not going to change anytime soon, because as long as Democrats and Republicans are in control of everything, they're going to continue to be in control of everything. They don't want to make the world a better place. They simply want to make the world to look like how they want it to look so they can always be in control. Don't forget that. So this Labor Day, I hope that you have a chance to maybe think about other options. Maybe think about other parties. I suggest you check out the Libertarian Party, but there are other parties to check out as well. And I recommend that you do that between now and November. You can go on websites like Ballotpedia and find out what your actual ballot looks like. Find out what candidates are going to be up for what offices, and you should investigate who they are. You might be surprised. You might actually find someone that you like, or even a party that you like better than the one you're in now. So with all that being said, that's pretty much going to do it for today, guys. We're already at 30 minutes, so I'm glad everyone who came here to check this out is watching it. I hope you had a wonderful Labor Day weekend, and we're just the start of a new week. So starting tomorrow, we're probably going to be right back at it with some interesting, fun headlines. But I guess only time will tell. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.